So we had to teach our salespeople how to sell value versus cutting the price. We couldn't afford to cut the price. Right. We had to make it valuable. And so we had an idea that we got from our think tank called a Why Buy Here book. And what it was just a documentation of what we did for the client's ownership experience going forward from signing all the paperwork to now they have a car, and a year from now, 2 years, 10 years, whatever that ownership experience looks like. And what are the things that we do different than everybody else? And we would let them know that. And so in the client's mind, we had a more valuable proposition than the guy down the road who was admittedly less money, but he didn't do the things that we did. How you can be the greatest salesperson on the planet.
Welcome to the Rethink Sales Show. My name is Derek Kelly. I am joined by Jim Shorkey. Jim, I was just thinking a lot about what we teach, and you teach a lot about your to not do list, right? What are we not going to do? And I was thinking, what are 4 to 5 things that you had to stop doing when you were bankruptcy imminent to be successful in sales? Whether, if you can think, I know I'm putting you on the spot, right? But what are some things that you had to quit to go from bankrupt to successful?
That was really more of a to-do list, okay? So I had to really get a hold of my cash and really watch my cash. This is to-do. So I had to really watch my cash. I got that from Mr. Hamilton. I needed to know every single day how much cash I had in the bank. And then from there to grow that cash, because cash is king. Cash is a really important element to running a successful business. It's the lifeblood
of your business.
It is. It is literally like blood, right? So one of the things that Mr. Hamilton told me to do was to really pay attention to the cash. The second thing he told me to do was to open my own mail, open every piece of mail. As a matter of fact, I was the only one that would go to the post office. We had a post office box, PO Box 446, and I had to go and get the mail, and you carried it in like a container. Yeah. Bring it back, and I opened up every single piece of mail, because when you open the mail, things that you're not aware of, like a certain bill, for example, like, why are we doing this? What's this all about? Yeah. So as far as to not do, when I started opening up the mail, I found things that I'd ask myself the question, why am I spending this money here? Could be $10, could be $100, could be $1,000, whatever it was, didn't matter. Let's say it is $10. Are we using this? Turns out we weren't. So let's get rid of that. And then I had $10 more, right? Yeah. And 10 or 20 or 100, whatever the case may be. So I needed to, according to Mr. Hamilton, I needed to open my own mail, which I started doing, again, to do. The next thing I had to do, according to Mr. Hamilton, was to sign every single check. I wasn't doing that. And he said, you have to have documentation when you sign a check, and ask yourself the question, why am I signing this check? What is this? So I would get the bill for the check, and then I would review it and make sure what it was. And again, ask the question, why am I doing this? And I would then sign a check, and that would be the end of that. And then the next thing he told me to do was to open up the bank statement. And the bank statement is telling you all about your bank activity throughout the month, but also has the canceled checks in there. And so I went through every single check, and I would have the girls bring me the documentation for those checks. Even though I'd already looked at it and I already had signed off on it and everything like that, I wanted to ask myself one more time, why am I doing this, right? But I also wanted them to know that I was checking. Do you see the change in culture there? That I was looking, that I was checking. So you're showing
you're taking responsibility.
I'm checking, yeah. And so this stuff better be right. The bill better be right. All the documentation needs to be in So when I signed the check, I got all the documentation. Signed the check, and then it's gone. Now it comes back as a canceled check. I had to re-pull the documentation, which was a little bit of a hassle. There was a package that had all the receipts for that particular, all the bills for that particular bill. So the bill would be $1,000, but there was maybe 100 receipts in there for $20 and $30, $40, whatever the case may be. So I would do that as a secondary thing. And again, according to Mr. Hamilton. So there was a lot of to-dos of that nature. As far as the to-not do's, I didn't so much get that stuff from Mr. Hamilton, but I learned a lot of things on my own. One to not do when you're bankruptcy imminent is to really figure out a way to stop spending money, stop the bleeding. So if I could somehow spend less money, then my break-even point would come down. So let's just say, for example, and I don't know if you're familiar with break-even points or not, but let's say I had it all figured out, and I learned this myself through expert counsel, but not necessarily Mr. Hamilton. So let's say I knew that if I sold 50 cars in a month, that I would break even. That's called the break-even point. So if I sell 50 cars, I break even. If If I sell 60, I make a profit. If I sell 40, I lose money. It's called the break-even point.
Yeah.
So by lowering that amount of money that I'm spending, I would bring that break-even point down, which meant that it was a lot easier for me to make money. And in order to get that bank account, remember Mr. Hamilton said, cash is king, cash is king. In order to get that bank account back up to where it needed to be, I needed to make a profit. And so a lot of people say, well, just sell more cars, but that's not necessarily valid. Because if your expenses are too high, you're going to sell more cars, but you're not going to necessarily make enough money. So by lowering the break-even point and selling more cars, that was the combination that really worked for me. And back to the cash, I knew what I needed to do, and I needed to get my cash up to a certain position. And so the cash really is your working capital inside the business. And the way you do that, figure out what your total expenses are per month. And let's say, just to pick a number, these are just numbers that are coming out of my head right now. So let's say the expenses, for total expenses, including payroll and everything, just to pick a wild number, let's say it's $100,000. Okay. According to proper accounting, proper financial management, I should have a minimum of a 6-month supply of working capital on hand at all times. So that would be, in the case of the $100,000 example, that would be $600,000. As I did my analyses, it turns out I was way short on that number. So I needed to get the number back up. But if you think about it, if I'm lowering my expenses, now my working capital requirements go down. Okay. And by doing that, I was serving two purposes. But I got that. Once you get to a certain point with working capital, and let's say, to go to the extreme, let's say you do have a 12-month supply of working capital, which means I would have $1,200,000 in the bank in the $100,000 example, which isn't necessarily a good example, but you get the point. So the idea is I have to have this much cash in hand. And if you think about it, when you're running a business and you're in a situation, COVID-19 comes to mind. If I had the right amount of cash on hand, let's say a year's supply, then I pretty much become bulletproof, because even though COVID-19 really affected the business, and the business ostensibly would have lost money for a month or 2 or 3, whatever, if I have the right amount of working capital, I can sustain the loss. I can even take advantage of the marketplace, because I can do things that other people can't do who don't have that working capital in play, which certainly back then when I was bankruptcy imminent, I did not. So there was a lot of things that I needed to do according to Mr. Hamilton. That was that list that I always talk about. But there were also some things that I learned not to do. And primarily when you're in a situation, anytime you're in business, this isn't just this situation, but you really got to be careful what you're spending your money on. Are you in line? You know, with our business being in the automobile business, there was the ability to figure out what should your sales commissions be as a percentage of the dollar or the gross dollar. What should it be? Oh, geez, Jim, you're too high. And I found these things out. That was through the
So there was a formula.
Oh, it was just, it was called a composite. And so I found out that maybe my commissions, I was paying too much money in that regard. Or maybe I was paying too much money for non-productive work, like your janitor, and I'm not undermining the janitor, but
you're not making a profit off of that time that's happening.
Not at all. There's a lot of non-income producing jobs that there's a standard that we need to be within. And so it might come to pass that we can take that janitorial position and combine it with another position and go from 2 people to 1. Now, we don't want to get rid of people. That wasn't the objective. But if we were out of line in terms of those indexes, then we needed to make changes. So there were some things that we did make, some hard decisions we had to make in terms of we were paying too much money. So we had to, in order to survive, we had to cut certain people's pay, or we had to eliminate certain positions. We just couldn't afford it. So that would be to not do. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So it's a question of, when you look at a mature business, how much money are you bringing in? That would be the income. This is overly simplistic, but we're bringing in this much money, but this much money is going on. Now, if that money going on is exceeding the money coming in, then you are in fact losing money, which I was. So as far as to do, I needed to bring in more money. As far as to not do, I needed to spend less money. That's a long answer to a short question. It's a question of, what do I need to do? Okay, we get that, right? You get that, right?
Yep.
What do I need to stop doing?
Yeah.
That's the essence of the to not do list.
What do I need to quit, basically?
Exactly. What do I need to stop doing?
Yeah. And it's true. And the people we've worked with, Rob Hoffman, Bruce Burke,
Kevin Price,
all those folks have things that they started doing and things that they've stopped doing.
Correct.
We just talked to Kevin a few days ago, and he was saying, oh, I used to not care too much about my health, and then I did this 10X health thing. It was a decent price, but it ended up giving him supplements that he could continue to take that were specific to him. And I think what you did really well in all your years in the automobile business, at least from what I hear from you is that you really made sure that what you were doing was not just specific to your industry, but specific to the people that you serve.
Yes.
And specific to how do we make sure we take care of the team, we take care of the customer, and that we make sure our revenue's in line, top line revenue, and also our expenses are in line. And it sounds so simplistic, gang. It's, oh, yeah, income minus expenses. But I think actually the times when I, as a business owner myself, go back and look at those things and take an afternoon or a day to look through that, it's really helpful to be like, oh, why are we paying for this? This doesn't really make sense. And as a salesperson, that's probably crucial as well.
And the one advantage that we have in the automobile business, and you can get this information on your own, business owners, but we had very strict standards that we needed to live up to. So the first standard on the operating report would be your sales, your selling dollar, which is just a gross sale. I sold 10 vehicles for an average of $30,000 a piece. That would be $300,000. So that's what are called gross sales. Based on those gross sales, we should have gross profit of a percentage of that number. And so we knew right away if we weren't at that percentage that we needed to charge more for the cars. This is business, right? So we're charging, again, it's a $30,000 car, but we needed to be charging 32. We started charging 32. The sales went up to now from 300,000 to 320,000, but our profits went up as well because the gross profit was higher. And then from that gross profit, then the expenses, that's why it's called gross profit. The expenses come off of that, which leads you to what is called net profit. And I like to call net profit Hip National Bank. Right. So, and it's not totally true, but once we take the selling dollar, okay, and subtract off the true cost of sale for that vehicle, that gives us what is called gross profit. And then from there, all the expenses need to be in line as a percentage of that gross profit. And if they're not, then we know, oh, geez, we're spending too much money on A. We're spending too much money on B. And we start to work on that. And so we make all the adjustments, and now we go through a couple months, and now we are making a profit. And then we keep working on what can we do to maximize that profit, because that is the essence of a business, is what is called profit maximization. We need to make as much money as we possibly can, within reason, of course. And that's how it works, based on these indexes. So that's, again, a long answer to a short question. That's how I did what I did. I realized that my numbers were way out of whack.
Right.
I realized that I wasn't paying attention to cash. I wasn't opening up the bank account. I wasn't signing the checks on and on. So as soon as I started doing those things and then stopped doing the stupid crap I was doing, it turned around.
Yeah. And I think you see that, guys. It's so true, because I didn't do this till, we've been in business for 12 years now myself, but I hadn't done it for the first 5 or 6 years of the business. I started looking at it, and it's okay. Let's pick a round number. Let's say you charge $50 an hour, just because that's an easy number. But then you start to look at, wait, okay, I'm paying somebody $25 an hour, and we have this ad cost that we're spending, and we have the utilities. And then you start to add it up, and you're like, oh, this number needs to go up in order for our net profit to be higher. And I think for a lot of you guys, salespeople, entrepreneurs, take the time to actually look at, okay, what are we selling X for, whether it's a product, whether it's a service? What are we selling it for? What is our actual cost? Not just your cost maybe for labor or team, but also your hard costs, right? And by hard costs, we mean expenses, like what's your utilities, right?
Rent.
What are you paying for software? Maybe you're paying for QuickBooks.
It's every dollar. It's every dollar.
Yeah, it's so many things to it. And then you realize, oh, this is where our pricing should be. And Jim probably did a lot of research on the indexes that were specific to your industry, which is smart. Right? He wasn't just saying, oh, what would a barber shop do? Because Jim's not running a barber shop.
No. I was in a think tank, and these were professional automobile dealers. Some of them were brilliant, way smarter than me. And I got around these ladies and gentlemen, and I learned and asked questions and figured out what they were doing, went back, made the requisite changes. And that's how I went from bankruptcy imminent to what it had become. And one of the interesting things about it is, when it comes to price, there is a very strong possibility, and there was for me at least, I needed to raise my prices. Okay, so once I raised my prices, I had to figure out a way to sell the client on that higher price. And it wasn't like the price was 10 grand and we said, oh, by the way, we changed our mind, it's not going to be 11 grand. It's just that the clients were coming in on a fresh basis. The price was higher than what it had been before, which I wouldn't even know that, but I still had to sell that price. So we had to teach our salespeople how to sell value versus cutting the price. We couldn't afford to cut the price. We had to make it valuable. And so we had an idea that we got from our think tank called a Why Buy Here book. And what it was just a documentation of what we did for the client's ownership experience going forward from signing all the paperwork to now they have a car, and a year from now, 2 years, 10 years, whatever that ownership experience looks like. And what are the things that we do different than everybody else? And we would let them know that. And so in the client's mind, we had a more valuable proposition than the guy down the road who was admittedly less money, but he didn't do the things that we did.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
That's so
It's called
good.
Why Buy Here? Why should a client buy a car here and pay more money? We felt that was what they should have done.
Yeah, and you've talked on previous episodes just the value that you guys brought to the table, not just that you care, you do, and not, but the amenities that you have, the after service, the parts shop, all the different pieces that went into the value of buying with you guys. And man, Jim, that was such a good, just dense episode of you talking through what did you do, what did you quit, and then really breaking down kind of the way to think about your business. So guys, like, comment, subscribe. Let us know if this content's valuable to you. And
I have one more thing I want to say.
Yes.
And I want to be very clear about this. And so a lot of people are going to not like what I'm going to say next. The number one objective of a business is to make a profit. If you're not making a profit, then you're not viable. If you're not making a profit, then you're not going to be able to sustain the business. You have to make a profit. This is how you do the things that you want to do as a business owner going forward. And so many people get that one wrong.
Yeah.
What's the number one objective of your business? I want to take care of customers. No, it's not. That's how you make a profit, by taking care of your customers. But the number one mission is to make a profit. And what should that profit be? You better figure it out. And then how do we get there? And that's where we seek expert counsel to find out. It's out-serve, out-train, out-deliver, and do all these different things that we can to make it a more compelling sell.
Yeah.
But yeah, you got to make a profit. That is really important.
It's crucial because if you don't have it, I've seen friends of mine who they've been successful for so long and then they might lose their business. It's like they lost profit somewhere. And I wish I could go back and tap them on the shoulder and say, hey, how do I help you not stay stuck there? But it's sad when you see a business go under.
Well, let's go back to Mr. Hamilton. You got to know your cash. How much cash do you have in the bank right now? Number one. Number two, how much cash should you have in the bank right now? And if you take just simple math, take your total expenses for the business, including everything, and multiply that number times 3, that will be the bare minimum. That gives you a 3-month supply of working capital until you're broke, assuming you have no income coming in. And you'd like to get that number around 6 months, preferably a year. Excuse me, a year makes you bulletproof.
Right. Because
COVID would not have been a problem.
It allows you to be ambitious, right? You can say,
does,
I'm in a spot where I can
Cash is king.
build a second dealership or buy
Cash
this
is king.
place out or whatever
So
you want to
remember
do.
what I told you. Cash is king. Cash is king. Just remember that.
Guys, comment. Let us know if you've actually take the time and sit down and do this for yourself. Let us know. We don't need to know your numbers, but has this been helpful and has this way of thinking, right? Results from thinking, rethink you. Our goal, our mission is to help you rethink yourself so you can rethink your sales. So Jim, thank you. Guys, let us know in the comments. Like this video. It helps the algorithm show it to more people.